David Bursey here with a new episode of 3 for All. This is 3 Reb Beach Licks from 2008, and this is technically the third time we've looked at Reb in a 3 for All episode, breaking down some of his licks, and there's also the Chords of Winger chord play episode, breaking down some of his chords and rhythm work. And definitely, Reb Beach is a legendary rock guitarist, a founding member of the band Winger, also toured and recorded with groups like Whitesnake and Dokken, and there's not really that much different in Reb's musical universe compared to the last time we looked at him. He still doesn't like using his pinky. He loves tapping, and he's a legendary badass. So this episode is going to be a little bit different than the regular kind of format that I've used for these 3 for All episodes, and we have looked at Reb's licks before, but we're going to target something very specific in his playing style, and I've had lots of students and friends and peers ask, how does Reb tap scales? Because his approach is noticeably very different. And he does do, like Van Halen type tapping, but not very often. Usually Reb's running, tapping ideas in a totally different way. Running across the strings, across the fretboard, kind of using like these zigzag diagonal, approaches. It's very interesting and very unusual. And we're going to basically dive headfirst into his approach. And I found this great footage of him kind of breaking down some tapping ideas. So if you're really curious, like how he gets those blazing, crazy tapping runs, using scales, this is the episode you're looking for. The licks in this episode came from a Japanese DVD that accompanied a guitar magazine in 2008, and it wasn't Young Guitar, which Young Guitar is definitely a very famous, Japanese guitar magazine. I think it was actually just called Guitar or Guitar something, because I couldn't really see the name of the magazine, but the footage is definitely floating around on YouTube. There's like multiple versions of the same lesson. But I really liked, the way he was running through a single idea. He started sequencing and adding some variations, and you really got a bird's eye view of how he runs these tap scales. All right, the first lick, or first idea I'm sharing here, is actually just his performance of this D natural minor scale, or D Aeolian, on the neck, and he's tapping his way through it. So I'm going to play the footage first, and then we're going to break down what he's doing and kind of walk through this. So here's the footage of Reb playing D natural minor tapped. There's the footage of Reb tapping his way through D Aeolian, or D natural minor, and just a heads up, he's actually tuned down a whole step during this footage, but I just kept this whole lesson in standard tuning. So he's actually playing it, fingered like he's playing E, but tuned down a whole step, it's going to sound like D. So if you want to play exactly the same way that Reb's doing this, you can tune down a whole step, and then move everything I'm about to show you up a whole step, or 2 frets, and you'll be in the same place and location that Reb was. I just didn't want to retune, to be honest. And we can safely do this entire thing in standard tuning. We're just moving down a whole step. But D natural minor, you could play all over the fretboard, without tapping, like this. And you can play those notes anywhere. There's D, E, F, G, A, B flat, and C. Very, very common scale. I usually think of Randy Rhoads and Michael Schenker and players like that when I think of Aeolian. Very familiar, normal kind of sound. Now, I think it's beneficial to remove the tapping from this idea, and we're actually just going to do shift slides in the beginning. We are going to start tapping in just a second, but I want to do it this way to show you, kind of give you that bird's eye view of where he is, what the fingering movements are, and you can start to unlock this, with your fret hand, and then you can start tapping. So D natural minor played Reb's way, but with sliding instead of tapping would look and sound like this. That's basically what he's playing in this lick. And right there, he's basically, without tapping, there's the D, E, F, and then he's tapping this G. For right now, we're just going to slide to it. Right? Instead of tapping through it. And then right there, grab that A, B flat, C, and then shift slide to D. And keep in mind that shift slide's actually a tap note when we start tapping this. And then do the same type of thing right there, E, F, G, and then shift slide to A. There's your B flat, C, D, shift slide to E. There's your F, G, A, and then you're going to basically shift slide back and forth between A, B flat, back to A. So really slowly fretted, it sounds like this. And then when you think of where your fret hand is, and then your tapping notes, kind of unusual, but G, D, A, E, and then that B flat. Really weird, but like this. Really cool, and I love the way it just kind of flows right through the scale. And you definitely want to spend some time just kind of working on that slowly, and you're actually starting with a hammer-on from nowhere at the beginning of each string. That's really hard. Like that. And also muting is essential here, and here I am holding my pick and not really muting. But muting is really essential. You definitely want to keep the strings dampened that you're not playing as you kind of race and move along the string. Okay, before we move to the next lick, which is really just a variation of the first example, it's important to notice Reb's playing technique. I mentioned this earlier in the lesson, but he doesn't use his pinky. He rarely ever, unless it's like a chord thing or something, or he just has to kind of stick that pinky in there. But he avoids his pinky a lot. And if you looked at that footage, you may have noticed he fretted things with his fret hand like that, which is really unusual. I don't like playing that way. I'm not afraid to use my pinky, but he's doing this and that for those fingerings instead of this and that and that. So that feels noticeably different. And also Reb's approach, doing this, it's actually kind of sneaky and a little bit better for muting. You'll notice how clean it is when you hear him play through these examples. But he's muting and dampening. Obviously, he's run these scales up and down probably 1,000,000 times too. So he's a master at doing this. But that's something you need to think about, is muting, keeping things clean, because all you want to hear is this. You don't want to hear all that extra stuff. The next lick's basically the same idea, but he's sequencing everything a little bit different, like this. One more time. This is crazy. So the exact same scale, played the same way, it's just he's kind of sequencing and turning things around a little bit differently. So it starts exactly the same. The D, E, F, tap the G. It's when you move to the next string, that's when you kind of double things and do things a little differently. So start here. When you get to the D string movement, you're going to do this. Right? You're going to basically go all the way up to the tap note, go back down, and then go back up to the tap note again. Like that. And then do a similar thing on the G string right here. The same type of thing on the B. And then when you get to the end, just kind of end like that. That's really hands-on and crazy. So if you have trouble with that, don't feel bad, because that's crazy right there. The next lick's basically another variation of this idea, and I'm not gonna lie, this is terrifying. This is crazy, like this. Or something like that. So in the footage for this lick, you can actually see Reb's tapping with his index and middle finger and kind of alternating his way through it. And initially I didn't play it that way, but then I noticed he was doing it, and then I started to try it that way. And it does actually make sense for this lick. I don't like doing that with the first and second example, but this one definitely works. So really slowly, you can do this. Right? And that was, D, E, F, and I'm tapping the G note with my index finger, and then that A, B flat, C, and then I tap D with my middle finger, and then, kind of move back down like that. Get back to that D string, because that's kind of the pattern right there. And I totally didn't do it right. So index finger tap, middle finger tap, and then index, index when you do that repeat like that. And then right there you're going to move to the next string and you're going to tap that A note with your middle finger like that. And I do something similar right there where I use the index finger again for that A note the second time around. That way my third finger is ready for that E when you get up to this. You know, something like that, so really slow. That is really weird too, because your fingers, your tapping fingers are changing. Or something like that. And it's really hard to keep clean. It's also really hard to get that smeary, blurry sound that Reb is so smooth at getting with that lick. So I'm still working on that. I don't have that Reb Beach, speed or accuracy level. I'm still working on it because that was a whole new sequence for me when I saw this footage. I thought, whoa, I've never done that before. So I'm still kind of tinkering around with that, but that's the basic idea. Here's a bonus lick, and this didn't come from the footage we've been breaking down and looking at so far. This is really just me sharing an additional idea or direction for this material we've been looking at. And once you practice this and you kind of running that scale up and down like Reb did, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, there's Aeolian, now what? Well, you could convert that scale into other scales and modes. You could make, Aeolian into the major scale or Ionian. You could convert it into Lydian or Phrygian or something. And really one of the easiest alterations we can do right now is taking D Aeolian, change one note, and we can magically change it into D harmonic minor. And to do that, we're going to basically raise the seventh, which is the note C. We're going to raise that C to C sharp, and bam, now we have D harmonic minor. So originally we had D Aeolian right here. To convert that to D harmonic minor, we're going to change the C. So everything's going to stay the same on the first string. It's just when we get to the D string, now you're going to play A, B flat, and C sharp right there. And everything on the G string is going to stay the same as Aeolian. But when you get to that B string, there's your B flat, C sharp, D, and tap that E. And then everything on the high E is the same. So really slowly, and there's D harmonic minor. That's going to wrap this episode of 3 for All with 3 Reb Beach Licks from 2008. And there's definitely always been something very infectious and interesting about Reb's playing style. I mean, his soloing and licks and lead guitar and tapping and all this stuff's really impressive. But I'm a sucker for chords, and rhythm work and stuff like that, and I love his rhythm guitar style too. So he's definitely the package player. I mean, he can knock you out with his solos, and then turn around and knock you out with his rhythm style and his rhythm playing too. Great guitarist, a legend for sure. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.